3, 2, 1, 0.
Folks, it's 7 o'clock. It's Monday night, which means it's time for Monday Night Nerd. Thank you all for joining. My name is Corp Cosplay, and tonight we are talking about Green Lantern. Why is the Emerald Knight not appreciated as much as some of these other heroes in the DC universe? We've got Aquaman, who has 2 movies. We've got the Green Arrow, who's got an entire library of shows and amazing cameos here and there. We've got Flash, that's had a movie and a show. Why no love for Green Lantern? We're going to talk all about that and a whole lot more. If you're new here, my name's Corp Cosplay. I'm a cosplayer in the Southern Ontario area, and I've been a nerd since birth. This podcast, we're going to talk about comics. We're going to talk about movies. We're going to talk about music, wrestling, Comic-Cons, all that stuff, because that is my life. My life in my spare time is cosplaying and working, volunteering at Comic-Cons, and a whole lot more. Lindsay, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it. If you're watching this, if you could hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit all those things that lets me know you are a fan of this video, so then I know to do more like this. I appreciate that. I greatly appreciate you all swinging by and checking this out. Even if it's not live, I still appreciate your time, because time is important. Let's jump right into some newsy news, because we got a lot to talk about tonight. Folks, if you are a DC fan, and I think you would be if you're watching a show all about the Green Lantern Corp, you may have noticed that this is about the time of year when the James Gunn has decided, well, he hasn't decided, he has taken over officially the DCEU or DCU, whatever he's calling it now. And we have had the Penguin, which I still have not watched. It is on my list to watch. But the first couple episodes of a great cartoon, Creature Commandos, is out, and it is out on Max, and I had the privilege of watching the first 2 episodes. They're only half an hour, but I believe there are 7, 8 more on its way. Folks, this show is incredible, and I mean incredible. It is not what I expected, and I'm so happy that it is. So if you don't know, James Gunn is now taking over the DCEU, whatever you want to call it. He's going to be doing the TV stuff. He's going to be doing the movies, and he is going to be the Kevin Feige of the DC universe. And start off with the Penguin, and now we're going into Creature Commandos. And if you don't know what the Creature Commandos are, it is basically an offshoot or a other version of the Suicide Squad. Basically, the show is about Amanda Waller is not able to use humans anymore in her Suicide Squad, so she has decided to create a Suicide Squad all with creatures. And these creatures, if you're not a diehard DC fan or a horror fan, you don't really know who these characters are. And I specifically say a horror fan because Frankenstein and the Bride are characters in the DC universe, and they make an appearance in the Creature Commandos show. Now, this show is, like I said, I've only seen the first 2 episodes, so I don't know a whole ton of what's going to be going on in the rest of it. However, this is such a fun show. The idea behind it is the first 2 episodes, the first one is basically building the team. The second episode is about a foreign country who is being taken over by, I don't want to say a parody of a group in the States who may have someone who has just become president. Not saying it's them, but kind of looks and sounds like them. They've taken over this area, and the Creature Commandos are going in to get their area back for the government and the princess of the area. Now, this is a cartoon, but folks, it is not for kids at all. I don't remember seeing a warning beforehand, but folks, this is not for kids. There is language, there is sexual content, and it is hilarious. The team is basically, if you haven't seen the poster, it's Rick Flag Sr. You know Rick Flag from the Suicide Squad. This is his father. The bride of Frankenstein. Weasel, who you saw in the Suicide Squad movie. G.I. Robot, who is a World War II robot who wants to do absolutely nothing but kill Nazis. And his dialogue is hilarious because that's literally all he does when he sees a villain. He's like, is this a Nazi? And that's his only line. And he talks about his time in World War II. And there is, I cannot remember the girl's name, but she is a sort of like half fish, half human. And she is very adorable as well. Overall, they're a great 2 episodes. Like I said, it's only 2 so far. I know they're not going to be doing weekly. But folks, if you get a chance and you have advantage to see Max or to stream it on a service that we're not going to talk about here, please watch it. It is actually an incredible show. I'm very excited to see where they're going to go with this. All I've heard about Penguin, and Andres got in chat here, he said the DC TV is on a great run. Batman, Capes Crusader, Penguin, and Creature Commandos. Honestly, I totally agree. They're killing it when it comes to DC, and everyone's so surprised that the first 2 big properties by James Gunn, the Penguin and Creature Commandos, are both fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. So I'm very happy to see them just blowing it out of the water. So check it out. I think they have a new episode every Thursday. So make sure to tune in on Thursdays when those episodes drop. Now to jump over to the other side of the street, we're going to talk about Marvel for a second. If you have a gaming system, whether it's PC, whether it's Xbox, whether it's PlayStation, I think it's on Xbox, Marvel Rivals is out now. And if you don't know what Marvel Rivals is the Overwatch version of Marvel. They've created a game. I cannot remember what the developer is, but it is basically Overwatch with Marvel characters. And a lot of people are loving this game. The looks of the characters are very different than what traditional looks of the characters are. They're very Eastern European, Asian inspired looks. So very Genshin Impact if you're a gaming type person. Really cool looks that a lot of people are loving. And like I said, it's basically Overwatch. It's a live service. And I don't play multiplayer. I'll tell you right now, I haven't played multiplayer since Call of Duty Black Ops 2, I think. Other than that, I am a single player person. But I saw this pop up. It's free to play. So I threw it in. I just wanted to see what the characters are like. And I've played 4 matches, and I love this game. I've never played Overwatch. I bought Overwatch, and I've literally played 1 match and turned it off. This is such a fun game, and it is getting so much love because it doesn't appear to be a pay-to-play type game where you can pay a bunch of money and get a whole bunch of extra stuff. You can unlock a lot of the stuff in the game just by playing, which is something a lot of gamers have been asking for. Just let me play and unlock stuff like the old days, and it will make everybody happy. And guess what? It seems to be working. I am really enjoying the game. I'm not 100% sure on all the details of the games. Again, I've only played 4 matches, but going into it, there are different classes like most shooter games now. There's support classes, tank classes, all that stuff. My main right now is Punisher because Punisher is super easy to use. I don't really have to fight with him that much, but I'm really digging it. If you're a cosplayer and you're thinking of doing a Marvel cosplay, definitely check it out because I would not be surprised if we go to a convention this year, whether it's MegaCon, DragonCon, Fan Expo, whatever, there will be cosplayers dressed up as these versions because they look incredible. In fact, I saw the way Hawkeye looks in this, and I'm like, do I add this one to my repertoire? And I'm like, no. I have to do Red Skull first. But yeah, there's some really cool looks. So even if you're not a gamer, check it out online, see what some people are saying, because even the looks of these characters are just cool just to see what they look like. A little bit more gaming news. What am I playing right now besides Marvel Rivals? I did start Dead Space. I never really played Dead Space back in the day. It was one that just kind of passed through. Again, I think this was when I was really into Call of Duty and didn't really play a lot of other stuff. But they've remastered it, and it is free on the extended version of the PlayStation Network. And I threw it in, and I gotta say, after about an hour, I am really enjoying this game. I love Marvel Rivals right now, but I'm probably gonna have to take a break from it and jump back into Dead Space. The horror aspect is really fun. The controls are really good. If you don't know what Dead Space is, it's a game where you're out in space. It's sort of like Aliens meets The Thing, I think it is. Again, I don't know much of the story, but these creatures come out and they're coming to attack you, and the only way to kill them is to use your sort of like a saw blade gun, and it cuts off their limbs. So you really have to be accurate in their shooting to cut the limbs off properly, which is an extra fun bit to play with because most people are used to zombie shooters and it's just headshot, headshot, headshot. But this one is really fun. I'm really enjoying the atmosphere, and it's a really fun horror game. Marcy in chat saying that's a scary game to watch someone play, and I totally agree. I started to play without my headset on, but my wife is not a horror fan, so as soon as I started getting into the scary stuff, I'm like, nope, they're going on. My headset's going on. I'll just enjoy it on my own. But yeah, I'm going to be checking that out and enjoying that probably for the rest of the week while we have some relatives over. We've got some relatives coming over tomorrow night, staying with us for a little bit. So I might have some time to myself. I might not. I might be busy hanging out with everybody. But anyways, I'm really enjoying Dead Space. Last bit of news for gaming. With the purchase that I talked about last week where I upgraded my PlayStation Network subscription, I now have the full tier, the extra tier, which gives me access to retro games, and retro being PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 3. I never really got into the Ratchet and Clank series, the Sly Coopers, the Jack and Daxters, and all that, but I've heard how much fun they were. So now that I have the subscription, I was like, hey, I should really give these games a shot. So before Dead Space and before Marvel Rivals, I threw on the first Ratchet and Clank. No, let me take that back. I threw on the first Jack and Daxter. And I have to admit, there is something about a retro game that is very different from the games of today. And I realized this is a trend when I threw in Sly Cooper after. And that is, even games from back then, and back then being 2 generations ago, 3 generations ago, were a lot bloody harder than they are now. And I could not believe this. So one of the features on the Sly Cooper game on the PlayStation Network is it has a rewind feature. And what that basically is if you get to a point where you die, you can hit one of the buttons and it will give you sort of a timeline, and you can backtrack to maybe about 30 seconds ago and start from that spot again. It's almost like it's continuously taping where you are. The amount of times that I've used that rewind feature is shocking, because I'm like, it's Ratchet and Clank, it's Sly Cooper, it's Jack and Daxter. These are all not kid-friendly games, but teen-style games, so it can't be too difficult. Man, these are complicated games, and there are times where I'm sitting there going, this has a life meter. Like, there are lives needed in this game, and if I get down to 0, I have to go back to, I don't know, do I go back to the beginning of the game like a Mario game? So I was talking to my wife about it. I'm like, there's no way this was that hard back in the day. And she played them before, and she said, yes, they were that hard. And I'm like, how do you enjoy a game like that? Because I'm the person, and I talked about it here on the channel, I'm an easy gamer. I will put the game on easy to enjoy a story. I'll put the game on easy just to kick back and relax. If I'm doing a whole bunch of progress and there's no save point, or I get to a certain point and I die and have to go back like an hour, that is one of the most frustrating things in gaming to me. And I'm playing these games and I'm just watching my lives slowly dwindle down. And I'm going, if I wasn't using this rewind feature, I don't know how far I'd make it in these games without throwing it out the window. And I don't know what else to say about that, but it's just, I didn't realize how easy some of these games are nowadays. But I really noticed it with these ones. So I'm still probably going to go back and enjoy them because the rewind feature does still work and it does help. But yeah, there are some mechanics in that game that all of them, actually all 3 of them, that I just am like, how did you put these in and not have your fan base just explode in anger and rage? But maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe I'm just getting old and I need to go back and play my Mario or something like that where it's super easy. But folks, that is it for the news. There really isn't much else going on right now. If you see a bunch of paints up there, I have been doing a bunch of stuff for my wife's Christmas present. So that has kind of been all my cosplay. If you don't know, before the show, I hop on Instagram for about 15 minutes just to talk about cosplay and all the stuff I've been working on, because I don't want to take up 15, 20 minutes of this show when I got a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about. So if you want to see what I'm doing when it comes to cosplay, stay on Instagram and check out 15 minutes before the show. I usually jump on and I'll do a live stream talking about what I'm working on, because I've been working on my wife's stuff. I've got, let's see if I can spin my chair properly. I've got some BioShock Vickers there that are for my wife for Christmas, and I picked up some cellophane. So we're going to be doing a new Ghost Rider 2.0 head, and I will promise I will document the process properly, because I've had so many people ask me how I built the head, how I did the flames and all that. So coming for 2025, my priority at the beginning of the year is to make a new Ghost Rider and to make it properly, document it, so you all see how I do it, so you can make your own. So now, before we jump into the main event, we are going to do a quick sponsor, and thank you all. Thank you all for the 6 people. I see 6 people here. I greatly appreciate you guys being here. Everybody in chat, so thankful that you're spending your Monday night with me. If you can, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, all those things on this channel. It shows that you like the video. It shows that I should do more of these videos, because that's what I do. If I hop on the platform after, I'll give it a couple days. I'll see what videos get the most views, and that's what I know. Hey, you guys like this stuff, and I'll do more of it. So if you like stuff where I'm just talking about a superhero and why they should be appreciated more, that's great. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And last but not least, as always, you know, we have a sponsor on this show every single week. Every single week, it is my beautiful, loving, amazing, incredible wife. She is always my sponsor, because I seriously would not be here without her. I would not have this amazing house because of her. I would not be in the mental state because of her. She is incredible, and anybody who has met her, you are all well aware, including many of the people who are in chat. You have met my wife, and you know how important she is to me and how great of a person she is. So she will always be my sponsor, because even if someone were to give me a couple bucks to sponsor this show, it wouldn't be without her. So she is my sponsor. I love you, hun. Thank you very much for everything. We ready for the main event, folks? We are at the 17-minute mark. Let's get ready. So, if you saw the thumbnail, if you read the title, you know tonight we're talking about, if not my favorite DC character, the Green Lantern. Now, let's start things off with my personal history with Green Lantern. And it's actually ironic that Lindsay is in chat right now, because Lindsay will totally understand part of this, because her husband is actually a key point of this. Why Green Lantern? That is a question I have been asked by several people, because Green Lantern is not one of the big ones. And I don't mean to shame Green Lantern. He's a big member of the Justice League, but he's not a Batman. He's not a Flash. He's not a Superman. He's not a Wonder Woman, etc. So I didn't read DC really growing up. Every kid, I think, has a Batman comic every now and then, but most kids my age, we read Marvel. We were X-Men fans. We were Spider-Man fans. We loved the Marvel universe. And it's nothing against DC, but Marvel at that point was written more towards kids. We had the animated shows as well, and we had the animated Batman series, but that was just Batman. And back in the day, that was everybody knew Batman. That was DC's golden goose. You had Batman movies. You had Batman TV shows. You had Batman everything. You had Batman albums probably, but not much else. So you really only had one thing to go off of. When I started getting really into comics was around 2008, 2009. Now, you probably know the year 2009 is important to me, because 2009 was the first year I went to Fan Expo. And I went with Lindsay's husband, Gavin, and our other brother, not really blood brother, but we've been best friends for decades, so he's basically my brother, Tom. So I went with Tom and Gavin, and we had a blast there. And we had just started to really get into comics, and going to a Comic-Con that was 3 days miles, it seemed like, of comic stuff, was a comic overload, to say the very least. Now, I can't remember exactly if it was at Fan Expo around that time or if it was before. Without really discussing it, we kind of picked our favorites. And Tom, you've never met Tom, but Tom is how do I describe Tom? If you said pick a hero for Tom, it's Batman. Like, wears black, metalhead, Batman. Like, he is Bruce Wayne, he is Batman. And Lindsay's husband Gavin picked the Flash. Why did he pick the Flash? I really don't know. But he kind of picked Flash as his favorite. Now, that left me in a corner because I love Batman, but Tom had already picked Batman as his favorite, and we could always have the same favorite, but I felt like we should have different ones. And I didn't want to pick Superman because I love Superman, but he's very OP. He's very overpowered. He's kind of the golden child, which I try to be, but he doesn't really have a weakness unless you're Doomsday. So it was kind of hard to wrap my head about being my favorite. And then I found this. This is The Blackest Night. This is one of the most important series when it comes to the Green Lantern. And I read I think it was just one of the middle issues. It wasn't a first one, it wasn't a last one. And I fell in love with this character. And the reason I fell in love with this character, especially this version of it, was as you can tell by the characters in the background, these are all your dead superheroes. And we're going to get more into this series a little bit later. And there's also different icons in here. You can see the Green Lantern logo down there, but there's other logos that appear in this and come to fruition that we're going to talk more about. And there was artwork at Fan Expo Canada in 2009, and it showed all of these dead Black Lantern DC characters, and they were all the heroes. There was Batman, there was Hawkman, there was Deadman, there was a whole bunch of them, all on this big board. And I can't remember we were in line with, but this art piece was right there, and I was just staring a hole through it because it was one of the coolest looking things I'd ever seen. And I actually have a picture somewhere on my personal Facebook that I took of it because I thought it was such a cool art piece. And when I got home, I really dove deep into Green Lantern and found how important this character is to me on multiple different levels. And we'll get into that more later when I talk about the series. So let's start off, though, with a history of Green Lantern. So the first Green Lantern was Alan Scott, not Hal Jordan, and he was created in 1940 by Martin Noble, and with scripting and co-scripting of the first stories by famous DC writer Bill Finger. And this was during the Golden Age, 1940s. Alan Scott usually fought common criminals in Capital City and later a little bit in Gotham with the aid of his magic ring. So the power of the Green Lantern is he has a ring and a lantern. The lantern is basically there to charge the ring. And what the ring does is no matter what the bearer thinks of, it will create an energy construct out of it, and he could use that as weapons. This is a very interesting thing about Green Lantern, is that the wielder of the ring, the person who has the most willpower, can construct anything their mind thinks of. Now, this is very interesting when it comes to one Green Lantern. We'll get to that in a second. For the Silver Age of comics, John Brom and Gil Kane reinvented the character as Hal Jordan, the main Green Lantern that most know, in 1959, and introduced the Green Lantern Corps, shifting the nature of the character from fantasy to science fiction. So what this basically did was it took the character of the Green Lantern and turned them into a overarching universal police force. And that's what the Green Lantern Corps basically is. There is a Green Lantern for every sector of the universe, and every Green Lantern is there to protect it. So there are hundreds of Green Lanterns of millions of different species and creatures and everything else that are there to protect the worlds. Now, during the Bronze Age, Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams introduced John Stewart, a new member of the Corps, and who was the first DC hero who was African American. Now, this is very important. There is a very famous podcast from Kevin Smith talking to Neil Adams about the creation of John Stewart. Now, back in those days, most African Americans were written as Neil Adams says, as thugs, as people who were addicted to drugs. And he wanted to give the African American community a character they could be proud of. And he felt Green Lantern be a great character to do, because when the way Green Lantern gets the ring is it is sent out to the universe to find someone who has the most willpower. Now, Hal Jordan's background is a fighter pilot. He has to be brave and have willpower as a fighter pilot. That makes a lot of sense. After Hal Jordan, there was a temporary Green Lantern known as Guy Gardner. Now, Guy Gardner is a jock from the Midwest. Now, Neil Adams' story was, if this is an alien ring coming down to the planet Earth, the ring twice it's kind of hard to believe that they picked two white guys. And I totally agree with that. And he brought up that there are, you watch the Olympics, there are many, many different people out there, many different ethnicities, colors, backgrounds, etc. And the ring picks two white guys. So he decided that he wanted to create a African-American character that they could be so proud, that group of individuals could be so proud of. He drew it a specific way. He wrote it a specific way. John Stewart was an architect. He had military background, and he was a big part of the Green Lantern mythos. In fact, when the movie was created, a lot of people were unsure of who Hal Jordan was, because the recent Justice League cartoon that had been out for almost a decade, the Green Lantern in that was John Stewart. It wasn't Hal Jordan. And a lot of the DC executives at the time did not realize the power of the television and how much that meant more to kids than the comic books. So John Stewart played a very notable role in the world of the Green Lantern and DC Comics. There have obviously been other Green Lanterns as well as Guy Gardner, as I mentioned, Kyle Rayner, Simon Baz, Jessica Cruz, and Joe Mullen. Now, going back to what I said before about the construct part, this is, again, really interesting, because you'll notice if you read Green Lantern, every Green Lantern sort of has their specialty when it comes to their constructs. Alan Scott back in the day was very cartoonish. So he had a lot of big ball bats and stuff like that, sort of the time. John Stewart had more of a military background, so he has lots of guns and packs with big army type constructs. Guy Gardner, similar to Alan Scott because he was a jock, had, again, a lot of sports-based references in cars and stuff like that. Kyle Rayner is the interesting one in this situation, because Kyle Rayner is an artist, which means he has a very creative mind. And when they wrote Kyle Rayner originally and they wanted to make him a regular Green Lantern, they put an initiative in that he is so smart when it comes to his creative mind, he is not to have the same construct twice, which is brilliant. It's a giant pain in the arse when it comes to remembering what he's used throughout the decades. But that was one of the main initiatives, was he was supposed to be super creative. And I love his constructs more than anything. In fact, I've talked to a couple cosplayers about possibly doing a Lantern group cosplay, because I have the suit and I want to do constructs. I have some neon green filament, and one of the constructs that I love that Kyle Rayner does is he makes a T-Rex head out of his construct. So I have a pattern for a T-Rex skull that I'm thinking of making a construct out of. And I've always just loved that, because I grew up as an artist, so I love the creativity that came in through him. So that's the history. There's a lot more detail that we could get into, but I really don't want to get too in depth with it, because you guys will start nodding off. So let's jump into storylines, because that's a really big factor in the title of this podcast of why this is underappreciated. So with the willpower of the Green Lantern ring, one of the biggest problems of will and the biggest adversaries of will is fear. When you get fearful, you lose your will. You get scared. You don't feel like you can do it. And this was introduced in the Silver Age and the Bronze Age as a character called Sinestro. Sinestro used to be a Green Lantern, but he found that the fear-based energy was a lot stronger than someone's will, so he created the Yellow Lanterns, which is the counter to the Green Lanterns. He created his own core. With that came a creature called Parallax, and Parallax was a creature that would just instinct so much will or so much fear onto anybody facing him that they would instantly become scared and become crippled in fear. There was a storyline that Hal Jordan was the Green Lantern and he was trying to save his home world of Capital City, and he lost his fear and he committed a murder because he was so scared. And what that did, it allowed Parallax to come into him and turn the Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, evil, and turned him into the physical embodiment of Parallax. So the Green Lantern was corrupted. This is when Kyle Rayner came in and became the pseudo Green Lantern to fill in that void. Later on, Green Lantern, the Parallax realized Hal Jordan as Parallax realized the trouble that he had caused and the problems he had caused, and he had died. And he became a character called the Spectre, which sort of let's call him the Watcher. He's more in depth than that, but to simplify it, the Marvel version is the Watcher, of just someone who watches and doesn't interfere in much. This is where it kind of gets a little crazy because there's a bunch of crossovers in the Crisis and Infinite Earth and the New 52 storyline and all that. So let's get past all that because I don't want to get too in depth. What happens around the mid-90s is Jeff Johns, the main writer that most people know, and was also the head of the DC film and television, I think it was just film, DC Films for the past few years. He became the lead writer of Green Lantern. And Jeff Johns took initiative to reboot the character and to kind of forget everything that happened. And this is when this storyline kicked in after the rebirth, and that is the Blackest Night storyline. Now, what is the Blackest Night storyline? Well, because of certain events like Crisis on Infinite Earth and such, which I can go into a whole lot of, but a lot of heroes died, basically. A lot of heroes sacrificed themselves to save their worlds, and basically the DC universe was running very low on heroes. There is a CD grade level villain that was introduced many years back called the Black Hand, which didn't really have a lot of backstory. He was in a few issues. No one really remembered him. Well, we get reintroduced to him, and he's very fledgling. He wants to be more of a villain, but he just doesn't have the grandioseness of, what a true DC villain has. And in one of the most crazy pages on a DC comic at the time, he ends his own life by not with a gun, but with a blaster, and he ends his life. And what happens with that is another form of lantern light comes into play, and it's the Black Lantern. The Black Lantern is basically death, and the Black Hand basically becomes the figurehead of this core. And what the black energy can do is resurrect all of the dead heroes. And this is what the artwork that I saw back at Fan Expo caught my attention. And this story is basically Hal Jordan and other heroes getting together and fighting their own brethren in the Justice League and the DC universe. Now, as I showed earlier, there are other icons in this book. There are red ones, there are yellow, there are orange, there are blue, there are purple, there are white, or there are pink. What these are, and this is the genius of Jeff Johns, he created different color lantern corps. There is a red, an orange, a yellow, a green, a blue, a purple, a pink, a black, and at the end of the book, you get white. Now, what do these mean? Well, because Green Lantern is willpower, the other colors represent the rest of the emotional spectrum. So, we have red for rage and anger. We have orange for greed. We have yellow for fear. We have green for will. We have blue for hope. We have purple for compassion. We have pink for love. We have white for life and black for death. Now, this is one of the main things that got me into this book. And that is because when I was younger, I really struggled with anxiety. I really struggled with my emotions. There was a lot of fear in my life. There was a lot of anger of not knowing why I'm feeling this way. There was a lot of hope that I would get better. There was a lot of compassion from other people about how I was feeling. And I really appreciated this because anytime someone would switch colors, if you wore a purple lantern ring, you would get the power of compassion. If you wore a blue lantern ring, you would get the power of hope. And I really understood that because there were days where I was very fearful and I had so much fear that I felt like I was wearing a yellow lantern ring. There were days when I felt like I was wearing a blue lantern ring, that I felt like I was hopeful. And it really hit me on an emotional level that there was a comic out there that really touched on my anxiety and my fear of the outside world and what was coming and not understanding it myself. So I really got attached to this character because, again, Green Lantern was a character that, had his home world on the brink of destruction. And even though he had this willpower of, I can fight this, there was a crack and he was still scared of losing the ones he loved. And it took over him and became so fearful that he took this fear and made it his own. He became a villain because of it. And that really got me into this character. And another part about this, and this part really got my attention, is that later on in the book, the different emotional spectrums have their own core. So they have their own people, their own creatures of each core. But they weren't powerful enough, and they needed a DC hero or villain to add to their power. Now, that's interesting because you start to wonder, well, who was going to take each lantern color? Because there are some that the heroes could take, but there's some that you wouldn't really think heroes would take. And it was actually a really fun reveal of who these characters are. And I'm going to spoil it here because it's been out for decades. And if you don't know, so Red was taken over by Mera, Aquaman's wife. And the reason for that is she was so rageful on the human world that they were trying to take over Atlantis. So I like that idea. Greed was Luthor, which is perfect. And the best part about the Orange Lantern, so as I said, every color has their own core. Every lantern has a group of lanterns that sort of embody that, except for Orange. Because it is the Lantern of Greed, there is only one bearer at the time. If that lantern bearer passes away, only one ring is made and only one person gets to wield that power. The character that is the wielder of the Orange Lantern is known as Larfleeze. He is a creature who is very everything for themselves, including a storyline that was written by Jeff Johns, and I want to get an issue of this. It's Larfleeze finds out what Santa Claus is and writes a letter to Santa Claus at Christmas time saying these are all the things he wants, And when the letter is not fulfilled, Larfleeze wants to kill Santa and doesn't comprehend the logistics of that. So the orange land, and then when Luther gets it, his head explodes pretty much because he there is another bearer that he has to split the greed with, and he just can't deal with it. Hope is the Flash, which is perfect because Green Lantern and Flash have a long friendship. Love is Diana, Wonder Woman. Fear is the Scarecrow, which is just a perfect choice. And compassion is Adam. So having other Lantern colors take over some of the other heroes is such a fun thing. And if you want to deep dive into it, there's so many different backstories of different lanterns in the different cores that it really makes it a fun read to find out what each one has to do, like why they're the head of the core, for example. Like the big one, one of the big ones in the Red Lantern Corps is a kitten. It's a cat, and he's actually the pet of the main Red Lantern, Atrocitus. And to find out his backstory is actually incredibly heartbreaking. And when you read it, you realize, oh, I completely understand why this cat is filled with rage and is a Red Lantern now. So it is a very fun concept that is throughout the DC universe now. So there are many things that have come from this series, and then there's also sequel that goes into the Brightest Day. If you know the Lantern Oath in Brightest Day and Blackest Night, Brightest Day. So there have been many storylines throughout the years of the Green Lanterns, and again, I could go through every single one, but we've only got a little bit of time here. Now that you have a little bit of an idea of the Lanterns, let's answer the question that I kind of put in the thumbnail and the title of this video. Why is Green Lantern and the Green Lantern Corps so unappreciated? Why is something with such rich backstory, such a fun concept, why is it not bigger than it is? Like, you've still, even with the DCEU, you had Batman, they brought Superman back, they brought Wonder Woman back, they brought the Flash in. Why did we not get a Green Lantern? I mean, we got the Ryan Reynolds, we'll talk about that later, but why? Well, I have some thoughts. First off, Green Lantern, as I said, is a sci-fi property. And with other sci-fi properties, and we'll use Stargate as an example, we'll use Doctor Who as an example, we'll use Star Trek as an example, Star Wars to a point, but most people know what Star Wars is. These are all properties that have a lot of world building. And by world building, I mean it's not like Batman, where... And let me back up for a second. They have a lot of world building, and it's kind of hard to relate to Green Lantern. And let me explain why, because both of these will be answered. Batman, parents die. It's in Gotham City, which is Chicago. And he becomes vengeful because of it. And he wants to destroy all the crime in the city. Easily understandable. Kid sees his parents die, wears a costume, fights for vengeance. Got it. Superman, basically a fish out of water story. We can do alien coming down, trying to understand the world, but it's really a fish out of water. He doesn't understand the world. There's a little bit of awkwardness. He wants to be a good guy. He's got a love interest. It's kind of, you've seen that type of story before in other mediums and other ways. It's pretty understandable and easy to follow. Even Aquaman. Let's ignore the whole Atlantis and all that stuff. He wants to be something, and his parents want him to be something else. And not even just his parents. Everybody wants him to be something else. Everybody wants him to be the king of Atlantis, even his girlfriend Mira. He doesn't want to. That's a story that 95% of people go through in their lives. Parents, others think they should do something with their lives. They want to go another route. That's easy to follow. Lantern is harder because there's so many different lanterns. And each one of them has their backstory, so you kind of have to find the one you like. They're not always in the books and in the movies. And even at the basis of it, you get a ring for showing incredible will and strength, and you can kind of construct anything you want with it. That's kind of a hard sell to a general population. Like, a lot of people are scared. A lot of people are fearful about what is going on in the world and everything else. It's kind of hard to push the guy who's like, everything's going to be okay. It's a hard sell. Also with the lanterns, there's so much backstory when it comes to planets, creatures, even, like I said, even the lanterns themselves. There's 8 basic lanterns that anyone who's a fan knows of, but there's hundreds more of green and others. So it's really hard to kind of take all of that world building and even in a series, crush it down to even 8 hours of here's the characters, here's what they're about, here's the world, here's the backstory, here's the conflict, here's the solution. Like, that's just so much to just download as a viewer. So I feel like it's just such a tough property to get off the ground. And nothing can prove that more than the movie. And a lot of people ask me what my opinion of the movie is, and I'll tell you, I don't hate it as much as everyone thinks. I don't mind it. I put myself back in those shoes back in the day when that movie came out, and I look at what they had to go on and what they had to reference, and it's not a ton. And again, you're going off of this weird thought process of alien ring comes down, guy has to go up to another planet, train to use his constructs, he's got a love interest, there's another guy who gets infected, he becomes a color that fights the great. Like, it's really hard to make that all work in a cohesive way. Ryan's great as Hal. I know Neil Adams, and I think I mentioned it earlier. He agreed with me, and I said the same thing when I heard about the movie. Why is it not Jon Stewart? Because that was the one every kid knew. I don't know. I know the comics had Hal Jordan as the king of lanterns, but Jon Stewart is the one every kid knew, and you were marketing the movie to kids. You should have put him. But anyways, I'm not a DC exec, and if we've seen what they've done over the past couple decades, I don't think half of them have read a comic, or they've only read comics and don't know anything else. So trying to put all that together in a 2-hour movie, 2.5-hour movie, and really only having Batman to work with and then Superman in the early 90s, 80s, it was really difficult. And Alex in chat says, I think the failure of the movie is they spent 15 minutes telling you the backstory. They could have just left the backstory and left it for a future movie. Agreed, you could have done it that way, but you also need to try. I could see the DC executives going, okay, we have to sort of get them to figure out who he is, why he's there, what the backstory, why is this ring coming down, what's this creature who's chasing them. Like, I feel like if they just did ring coming down, there'd be a lot of questions of why him. It doesn't make sense. So yeah, it's an odd choice. And like I said, I think if I was a DC executive, I'd be kind of scratching my head going, how do we make this into a 2-hour movie and make everything make sense? So I don't hate it as much as a lot of people do, though. I love that Taika Waititi is in it. I find that hilarious watching it back going, hey, you did Guardians and all that, or you did Thor and all those movies. So yeah, I don't hate it, but I do see the problem with it. And I think that would have been, Alex said that would have been the mystery, get people engaged. Would it have got them engaged, though? It's a chance. There's a chance it could. I don't know if it would have worked, though. I don't know. I think if it was a Batman property or something that had some legs on it that people already kind of knew, I think that may have worked, but I think because this was kind of a cold character to a lot of people, I don't know if it would have worked as well as we'd think. So that's Green Lantern. What can we do for the future? Because we've got James Gunn taking over the DC universe. How are we going to make Green Lantern work in the 21st century, 2025, let's say? Well, we have a new Lantern TV show coming out, which is going to be Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart teaming up in what seems like a buddy cop movie in the Midwest, which is one of the ways I think they're going to get around the backstory and all of the world building is it's going to be set on Earth. So I don't know how that's going to work. I think it'll work well, but we'll see. I'm interested. I'm very interested. There's a new Lantern Corp comic book series that I think is either just come out or is about to come out that I'm definitely going to be looking into because it looks like it's going to travel with a lot of the Lanterns, which is good because I feel like there's kind of that, I don't know if it's rolling of the dice or, the bingo wheel of, pull a ball out. Okay, we're going with Simon Baz this series. So having a bunch of them. Who have they casted, Lindsay says? Let me pull that up because they have cast the new Green Lantern show. Lanterns. We have Aaron Pierre, who was in a movie or a show that Underground Railroad. Yes, he was in Underground Railroad, 6 episodes of that. And Kyle Chandler, who I believe is Friday Night Lights, is Hal Jordan. Yes, he is the coach on Friday Night Lights and is also one of the voice actors in the new Visions series, Star Wars Visions. So Alex said they end up retelling the Batman origins in every movie after the 20th time of telling the story. I think we know the parents die. Yeah. I think we've seen the pearls enough, in my opinion. I think Spider-Man proved it. You don't have to. But anyways. So we've got a TV show. We've got a comic book series. We also have a Green Lantern appearing in the new Superman movie. There have been shots out there that Nathan Fillion, the great Nathan Fillion, Captain Hammer himself, if you've seen Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, Nathan Fillion will be Guy Gardner, which is not the Lantern I thought they would have chosen, but hey, we'll see. So there's going to be a lot of Green Lantern in the next little while, which is good to see because I know James Gunn is really wanting to push characters that haven't had the spotlight. So we are going to get a new Batman. We know that. We're going to probably get a new Wonder Woman, but I think we need to try and expand this up a little bit more because if we just stick with these, 3 or 4 that everyone knows, we're going to run into a problem. Marvel's been very good at touching on different characters, including Wanda and Vision and Agatha and all those ones that it's going to make things a little easier for the Marvel Universe to expand. And I think DC is going to start doing that too. Gavin will be excited for that for sure. I know he will. Having Nathan Fillion in, because Nathan Fillion, if you don't know, has voiced Hal Jordan in several animated features. So I think a lot of people are thinking that would be his role, but he's playing Guy. Whatever. So we're going to get some Green Lantern in the next couple years, and I'm really excited about that because, having the Ryan Reynolds movie being the only real property outside of a comic book is kind of, it's kind of a damper. I mean, we've had a couple animated specials that were pretty good, and there was a cartoon series that was actually very good, but no one really remembers it. They touch on a bunch of the different color lanterns, which was really nice. So you can check that out if it's still available. We got a lot coming up for the Green Lantern Corps, and that makes me very excited as a Green Lantern fan. Hopefully it, knock on wood, works out for the best, because I think if we have another flop on our hands with Green Lantern, I'm going to be a little upset, because I want to see this character flourish, because I think that he's got a lot of potential to be one of the biggest characters in the DC universe. You just got to get through that first little bit to get people's interest. So we'll see. That is kind of it for tonight, folks. My nose is super, super itchy. I did ask on Instagram what people's questions were about Green Lantern. I'd answer them here. I got one in, and I gotta say, I knew this was coming, so I'm just gonna do it. Mike McDew said, "Why is Guy Gardner the best Lantern?" Mike, no. Guy Gardner is not the best Lantern. Kyle Rayner's the best Lantern. Why are you giving the jock the spotlight? Thank you guys very much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. We are on December 9th. Before I do the outro, if you can hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, really appreciate it, so I know to keep doing more of these going forward. This is kind of the last new episode for the year. Next week will be the last episode for the year. That will be on the 23rd. 23rd? No, I've got one more. Yeah, 16. We're going to do the 16th. We'll do next week, which is the 16th. We're going to do that as a recap. Just kind of going over cons over the past few years, talking about cosplay, and just sort of doing a year in review. I could do an episode on the 23rd, but I think we're getting a little too close to that holiday season. I know everyone gets kind of busy around that week, especially because Christmas and everything falls on a Wednesday, which means everyone gets kind of busy Monday, Tuesday. So we're just going to skip the 23rd. So next week is the 16th. Be here. We're going to go over sort of a year in review, talk about what's going to be happening in 2025, and then we are going to jump headfirst. On January 6th will be the first new episode of the year, and we're going to talk possibly, I still have to work on this a little bit. I want to flesh this topic out a little bit more before I do it, because I don't want to do one of it and then just be kind of, based off last week. You may have remembered I had a couple people reaching out to me asking me why I was following certain people on Instagram, because they felt like they weren't cosplayers, that sort of stupid mentality. So I'm going to talk about controversial cosplays and takes on cosplaying in general that might be controversial. I'm not going to, put my 2 cents in, but I do want to talk about what I've heard, what I've seen people talk about, what's happened to me. In fact, there have been some things that have been thrown my way that I would like to talk about. So we're going to probably talk about that on the 6th. If I can get fleshed out a little bit, I might push it out a little bit more. But I definitely have a whole bunch of episodes ready for 2025. Folks, I'm going to let you guys get out of here. You got a couple minutes left in your night before we were usually take off. Thank you again all for tonight. This whole year has been so fun doing this podcast, cosplaying, going to cons. Next year, I said back in 2020, I posted a story, I think, or it was a post. I think it was a story. That 2025 was going to be my year. I wanted to give myself 5 years of cosplaying and everything else to sort of get my foot in the door and really push it. And 2025 is going to be the year where I'm really going to take it to the next level. I want to guest at cons. I want to be at every con. I want to do everything in 2025. So 2025 is going to be a big year for me, and I can't wait to spend it with you guys here or in person. I love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week for the season finale, season finale of Monday Night Nerd, the wrap up of the year. Folks, have a great week. I love you all, and I'll see you very, very soon. Take care. See you soon. Hey, thanks for watching Monday Night Nerd. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the subscribe button, like this content, and follow on social media for even more nerdy fun. See you soon.